Eileen, let me turn it over to you, and it wasn't a sexy caption, but operational risk. What are we dealing with there?
Well, I think these are all the things that are impinging on the good operation of the companies. I spend most of my time either with operating companies or with asset managers that are owners of operating companies. And the things that are happening to us now are certainly global in nature. I think people have been lulled into thinking that Canada, or even North America for that matter, was distinct and apart from some of these other places, and it's absolutely not true, as we can see from some of the health issues and things that are coming at us. But I think companies really need to up their game in terms of looking at what the enterprise risks actually are. We've all dealt with these risk registers and heat maps where we've got the impact and the probability and red, yellow, green. We've had these things, but the problem is that we may not have the right ones at the top of the list. And if they have big impact, they certainly need to be on the top of your list, whether or not you think that they're very probable. And the things that we have added, for instance, at some of the companies that I've dealt with, is a speed impact. It sort of takes it from the two-dimensional realm into the three-dimensional realm, but speed of impact is a very important piece. And whether it's highly probable or not, if it hits you when you're not looking for it, it can have a very big impact on the company. So the question is, over which of these do we have some control? For instance, you're not going to have any control about whether interest rates rise or not, but you certainly are going to have some control over how you deal with it. The importance of having a mitigation strategy within the company, I think, is huge. First of all, in the security space, we need to prevent wherever we can, but the question of prevention isn't, it isn't always an issue. I think about the great opportunity that I had to talk to Chris Hadfield about a year or so ago, and I was asking about risk in his world, and he said, oh no, he said, we just assume that everything's going to happen. Whether anything we can imagine, then we assume it's going to happen, that the probability is 100%. And then we work on what are we actually going to do, how are we going to recognize it, which is the vigilance piece, and then how are we going to deal with it, which is the resilience piece. And he said, by the time we blast off into space, we feel that we've got everything that is absolutely could be known at this point. At least we've got a strategy for dealing with it, and we assume it's going to happen. Risk metrics are important. We have to figure out how we can have meaningful, quantifiable, measurable metrics. And sometimes it simply means having a look around and making sure that you are aware of what's being written, and that these things come to be little red flags on your path towards the vigilance point, that you can actually see when these things might be becoming larger. How are you going to do that? The board and management has to figure out what they're going to use as meaningful and quantifiable red flags, and how are we going to measure that these things are coming closer to us or they're actually becoming more important to us. If you look at, obviously, asset class when it comes to pension funds, which I live every day, all of a sudden you find that an asset class is a lot bigger than you thought it was, that it has more risk in it than you thought it had. These are things that happened to us, obviously, in 2007, 2008. People are much, much more vigilant now, but the thing is that it's ever changing. And you cannot ever be assured that something that you think has a certain risk profile is going to continue to have that profile. So measurement is key. Customers, all of a sudden, customer concentration is becoming a big deal. With companies continuing to merge, industries in concentration mode, you're going to find all of a sudden you wake up one day and the 4 customers that you thought you had is actually now 1. Geography. Anybody who sells out of the country, you wake up one morning and you find that, in the case of my shipping company, for instance, that Petrobras is your largest customer. How do you feel about that? How do you feel that the risk that poses to the company? It may be a wonderful thing, but it also carries with it significant risk. Financial, we've talked about that. Financial risk is continuing to be a big topic after 2008. There's just no question that is one that never goes away. It's not new, but the effect that it's having on companies and even such things as the financial leverage of consumers in Canada is going to have an effect on you. IT, we're going to talk about cyber risk not once but several times in this, but there's no question that cyber risk and the reputational risk that goes with that is a huge one for boards. How do we get a handle on that? How do we deal with it? I guess the biggest message on that one that I have is get help. Boards of directors typically are not trained in IT. It isn't intuitive to us. Most of us are too old for that. I mean, this old dog can still learn a few new tricks, but I think we need people to come and help us through that. And model risk, another one that we can look back to 2008 and say, you know, models that typically management prepares tend to be unidirectional. You know, there's never a question of what happens when the tail actually arrives, and I think the issue of measurement of tail risk has become a much, much bigger issue, and we're getting better at it, but until you can really get a handle on the size of what that tail risk might be, you're not going to be prepared for the next crisis, because obviously there will be one. And the natural disasters, I'm on a property and casualty insurance company board, and natural disasters are a fact of life for us, climate change, all the things that are coming with that. The question is, how do you mitigate some of those risks? How do you understand them? And how do you deal with the fact that the world is, as we know, it is simply not going to be the same. Things that we've done to the environment are going to come back to haunt us, and they're going to be actual business problems that we have to deal with. Expert help, again, I'm a big fan of expert help. Management can't know everything, and boards of directors simply have to use, whether it's scenario planning help, whether it's help with cyber risk, social media. There are people out there who can help, and we need to stop assuming that we can do it all ourselves and get help. One of the last two things, build a database of near misses and other lessons that we've learned from things in the past. Don't consign it to institutional memory. Really put it down. I mean, all of us who are involved in control one way or another understand that when we were faced with Sarbanes-Oxley, a lot of the problem wasn't that we didn't have the controls, that we didn't have the documentation that we did the controls. So I think now we've got to say, look, we've got to document these things as they're happening and make sure that we have as a corporate repository not only what we're going to do when the next one happens, but what did we do wrong the last time and how do we prevent making that same mistake. Two things to watch out for in my mind. Asymmetrical downside risk. People tend to think that the probabilities of things happening are even. They're not. The downside risk is always much more important to corporations than the happy upside, and we need to make sure that we are looking at the asymmetrical nature of downside risk and that we're weeding out bias, whether it's board bias or management bias. We've got to be absolutely sure that we're being even-handed in looking at these things, because it's all too easy to be optimistic, and the fact is, that isn't really helpful.
So Eileen, I was going through that list. There's a lot to jot down for directors to think about, and I think a lot of great points in there. I must say one that really resonated with me was the, preparing for space, the final frontier, but it was, we look at all the risks and then we go through and make sure we can mitigate them all. And my sense is perhaps in some of the risk scenarios these days, you say it's such a low probability, we're going to pass on this one and therefore miss it when it happens. So I thought that was an important point.